Hello, in this video we're gonna talk about variable collections. So in the previous video we introduced different types of variables, but sometimes you don't know how many variables you need and you might want to create or remove some variables after your program has been executed. In this case we have 4 different options in Python. So we have lists, we have tuples, we have sets, and we have dictionaries. So lists, tuples, and sets are similar to each other. They're basically used to store multiple items in a single variable. So these variable collections can contain any type of variables. So to create a list, all you have to do is put your variables inside brackets and separate them with commas. And to create tuples, all you have to do is to use parentheses instead of brackets, and for sets you use curly brackets. So before we get into the dictionaries, let's first talk about these 3 collections. So let's go ahead and create 3 variables. The first one is a list. As you can see, we're gonna create it using brackets. The second one is tuple, and the third one is a set. Right now if I run this, they do not contain any variables, but we can add as many variables as we want to them. So for example, let's add a few variables to our list. As I mentioned, we could add integers, or we could even add strings, floats, or any other variable type that you want. And now if I run this, you'll see that our list now contains data. We could do the same thing for our tuple and set. So I'm just gonna add a bunch of values to my variable collections. And now let's play this, and you'll see that my variable collections contain data. So you might ask, what is the difference between these 3 variables? Why should we use tuple or set instead of list? So first of all, list has more options than the other 2. And most of the times it's better to use lists. So to take a look at their difference, let's take a look at this image. As you can see, lists are ordered, changeable, and can contain duplicate numbers. So you might ask what these things means. So ordered means that the items have a defined order and that order will not change. And changeable means that we can change, add, and remove items after it has been created. And allow duplicates is obvious, which means you can have 2 variables with the same value inside the list. So as you can see, list has all the options. It is ordered, changeable, and you can put duplicate values inside it. But tuples, as you can see, are not changeable, which means whenever you create a tuple, you cannot change it anymore. And if you take a look at the sets, you see that they're not ordered. They can be changed. They cannot contain duplicate member, and they're not indexed. This could get a little confusing, so to start, just ignore sets and tuples and just use lists. Once you got the idea of how these data collections work, then you can dive deeper and look into tuples and sets. But right now in this video we're gonna focus on lists and dictionaries. So all the items inside our lists are indexed, which means the first item inside the list is indexed as 0, the second one is 1, 2, 3, and so on. Note that index starts from 0, which means the first item has index of 0. You can access each of these elements within our lists or tuples using brackets. For example, here when we print the entire test list, we could print a certain element, for example, index number 1, which is 16. So in order to print that, we open and close brackets and we pass the index that we want. So the index for 16 is 1. This is 0 and that is 1. So I say 1. And the same thing for tuples. You could access a certain element inside the tuple by using brackets. So let's say we want the first element inside our test tuple, and if I run this, you'll see that it is going to print 16, which is the second element in our list, and test, which is the first element inside our tuple. So in the image that I showed you, as you can see, sets are not indexed, which means you cannot access the elements of the set by addressing their index. So let's try that. I'm gonna open and close brackets and pass 0, and now if I play this, you'll see that for the list it is printing the indexed element. The same thing for the tuple, but for the set it is going to give us an error. So when you look at them, they look like each other, but as you get more professional in Python programming, you learn how you could use each of these based on different scenarios. So the same way that we are printing a certain index, we could also change the certain item within our list. But as I mentioned before, tuples are not changeable, which means you cannot change the elements inside a tuple. You can only do it for the list. So for the list, let's say we want to change the first item inside our list. So that is indexed 0. So I'm gonna write my list name and I'm gonna open and close brackets. I'm gonna pass 0, which is the index of our first element inside list. And then I'm gonna assign the value to something else. Now if I play this, you'll see that our list has changed and the first element is different. And if we try to change an element inside our tuple, you should get an error, because as I mentioned, you cannot change the values of a tuple. As you can see, we got an error. So as you can see, although they look like each other, but they have certain differences. Now let's just remove the tuple and the set. I'm just gonna leave the list. So as I mentioned, most of the times we just use lists because they are changeable, they're ordered, and they are indexed, and it is easy to use them. Now you can run different operations on your list. Let's take a look at the Python documentation. Here in the data structures, you'll see that these are a bunch of operations that you could do. So basically inside list, there are some methods. These are called methods. The first one is called append. So this is when you want to add a new item to the list, and it's gonna add that item to the end of your list. Let's try that. So here, if we want to add a new item to the list, we're just gonna write the name of our list, then we're gonna use dot, and then we're gonna write append. Then we're gonna open and close parentheses, and we are going to pass the variable that we want to add to the end of our list. Let's just add an integer and maybe a string right over here. And now if I run this, you'll see that our list has changed and 2 new variables has been added to our list. Now, there are other methods inside the list that you could take a look. For example, insert works similar to append, but with a difference that you actually define a position for your variable. So let's try it actually. Here, as you can see, it is going to add these 2 values at the end of our list. So let's say we want to add new to be second inside our list. Instead of append, we're going to use insert. So we're going to say insert. We're going to pass the index. So as I mentioned, index starts from 0. So the first element in 0. And let's say we want it to be second element. So we're going to pass 1. Then we're going to separate the index with the variable with a comma sign. And that's it. That is the index and that is the value. Now if I play this, you'll see that the first element is 45. The second element is new, and the rest of the elements are the way that they were. Now let's take a look at the other methods. Here we have remove and pop. They both remove an item from your list. The difference is when you use remove, you gotta pass the value of that variable that you want to remove from your list, and when you use pop, you're gonna pass the index of that variable. Let's actually go ahead and try them. Here, let's say we want to remove number 16 from our list. So we're going to say list remove 16. So if I run this now, you'll see that 16 is no longer exists within our list. And let's use pop instead. So when you use pop, you need to pass the index, not the value. So let's say we want to remove hello from the list. So the index of hello is 2 because this is the index 0, this is index 1, and this is index 2. So I'm going to pass 2. Now let's run this. You'll see that hello is no longer inside our list. Sometimes you want to remove all the items within your list. To do that, you could simply just use clear. You don't need to pass anything. So if you use clear, it is going to remove all the elements inside the list. As you can see, the list is empty now. And as I mentioned before, you can have duplicate values within the lists. So we have 45 and we can have 45 again, for example. And sometimes you want to count how many times a certain value has been appeared inside a list. In order to do that, you use count method. So it is going to return the number of times that X appears in the list, X being the value that you pass. So let's try that. I'm gonna remove the clear from here, and instead of printing the entire list, I'm just gonna print the count of value 45. So if I run this, you'll see the value is 2. It has been repeated twice. So if I do it for 16, you'll see the value is 1. And if I do it for a value that does not exist, it is going to be 0. Now let's take a look at the dictionaries. So as you can see, dictionaries are not ordered. They are changeable. They cannot contain duplicate members, and they are indexed. And as you can see, dictionaries and sets both use curly brackets, but there is a difference between the elements inside them. So sets, just like lists, are gonna contain just a value separated by comma sign. Dictionaries, however, are different. So this is going to be a dictionary. Let's add a few elements. So dictionaries contain a key and a value. For example, you want to create a dictionary that contains certain data about a specific person. In order to do that, we are going to create a key, and then we are going to separate it with colon symbol, and then we write the value. Then, just like other lists or tuples and sets, we are going to separate different elements with comma. That is going to be the key of the element. We're going to use colon, and we're going to pass a certain value. So let's say this is name, and we're going to pass value of John for the key name. And the second one, we could say age. So the key is going to be age. The value is 45. So you could add as many key and value pairs as you want. And here, make sure to separate the key and the value from the colon mark within a space. Just like that. And if I run this, you'll see that we have a dictionary which contains a key called name, and a value of that key is John, and another key called age, and the value of that key is 45. Now, as I mentioned before, dictionaries are changeable, which means we can access their elements and change them. So in dictionary, in order to access the value of a certain key, you could just pass the key inside brackets, and it should give you the value for it. For example, let's say we want the value of age. So we're gonna print test dictionary and the value of age. And if I run this, it is going to give us 45. The same way we could change the value of a certain key. So for example, we want to change the age to something else like 20. So if I run this now, you'll see that it is going to print 20. You can simply add a new item to your dictionary by assigning value for it. For example, right now we have name and age keys. So let's say we want to add another key called score. And let's say the value of a score is 5.4. And now if we print just the dictionary, you'll see that a new key has been added with its value. This way you can add new value and key to the dictionary. So when you want to remove a certain element from dictionary, you could just use pop method. So let's say we want to remove the age from the dictionary. In order to do that, we're gonna write the name of our dictionary. We're gonna use dot and we're gonna say pop. And we are going to pass the key of that element, which is age. Now, if I run this, you'll see that our dictionary only contains name and score and age has been removed. So basically these 4 variable collections can help you to store multiple values inside a single variable. Of course, each of them have different methods and you can run different operations. They even have different performance, which means sometimes using a set might be more efficient than using a list if you don't need to have a ordered indexed list with the capability of having duplicate members. You could just use sets. They're very faster. But as I mentioned before, just focus on list and dictionaries for now. So I'm gonna finish the video right here. You can contact me in Discord. The link is in the description if you have any questions. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.